All right, let's get right into this explainer. If you're running a growing organization, you've definitely felt the friction. Projects stall out, decisions get bottlenecked, and the sheer effort required to get things done feels completely disconnected from your actual output. Today, we're going to radically shift our perspective on this. We're going to stop viewing operational drag as some sort of talent issue and start treating it exactly for what it is, a strict systems architecture problem. Once you learn to see your company through this specific lens, you'll stop trying to just hire your way out of structural chaos. Here's the roadmap for today. We'll hit the headcount reduction fallacy, dive into the mechanisms of execution failure, deconstruct labor cost architecture, define structural interventions, and then wrap it all up with conditional rules for action. Let's jump in.
Part 1. The headcount reduction fallacy, and exactly why cutting payroll destroys capacity.
Now here is a claim that totally flips conventional advice on its head. When margins tighten up and payroll starts feeling way too heavy, the absolute gut instinct is to just trim the team, right? Well, that instinct is structurally wrong, and here's why. If you reduce headcount without actually auditing your underlying process architecture first, you're literally just removing execution capacity while leaving the root inefficiencies totally intact. You're simply forcing a smaller team to navigate the exact same broken workflows. That inevitably causes a total collapse in throughput.
We've got to look at the structural reality versus the conventional view here. The standard assumption is that high costs come from talent bloat, too many people doing too little. But structurally, what looks like a staffing surplus is actually a massive process deficiency. We inherently hire people just to manually bridge gaps where protocols should exist. Think about paying someone simply to copy-paste data between incompatible software tools because there's no automated link. You don't actually have too many people, you just have too many compensating tasks.
All right, Section 2, Mechanisms of Execution Failure, where we'll diagnose the root causes of all this operational drag.
Let's define our first major failure mode. We call this the founder bottleneck. The causal mechanism here is super specific. Operations are scaling outward way faster than the internal systems designed to run them. When you don't build an operating system to replace a founder's direct hands-on oversight, all that coordination gets forced right back onto executive judgment. Every single approval, every minor pivot, the system literally becomes the executive. And that guarantees the organization can only move exactly as fast as that one person's calendar allows.
That brings us to the second failure mode, the symptom promotion. So leadership feels the operational drag, and their knee-jerk reaction is to promote their absolute best individual contributor into an ops role just to fix things. This is a classic trap. It fails because it treats a symptom, not the structural cure. The causal mechanism is flawed, because the ability to execute a task flawlessly requires a completely different skill set than the ability to architect a system from scratch. When you promote raw talent to fix a missing system, you literally just burn out your best talent.
So how does this actually play out? It builds a very strict domino effect causal chain. Step 1, decision rights remain totally undefined. Because of that, we hit Step 2. Unclear ownership forces the team to escalate even the most minor decisions, which triggers Step 3. The executive calendar gets completely swallowed by internal coordination tasks instead of external growth, and that predictably leads to Step 4. Strategic growth just stalls out. It is a direct chain reaction, converting one missing process into a catastrophic executive bottleneck.
Moving on to Section 3, Deconstructing Labor Cost Architecture, or redefining how labor actually functions within a system.
We need to draw a razor-sharp distinction here between two types of labor in any organization. First, you have value-producing labor. This is the actual work generating output, the stuff you'd still have to do even if your systems were flawlessly perfect. But then you have compensating labor. This is work that exists solely to navigate around missing protocols. If someone is spending half their day hunting down approvals just because a handoff process is undefined, that is compensating labor. It doesn't produce a single thing, it's just paying the toll for a missing system.
So how do we actually fix this? You have to run this sequential diagnostic mechanism before you even think about headcount decisions. Phase 1 is role decomposition. You have to map out every single task to separate that value-producing work from the compensating work. Don't rush this. Then, Phase 2, process assignment. This is where you build the standard operating procedures to eliminate those compensating tasks entirely. Finally, Phase 3 is role realignment. Only after the first two phases do you restructure the job descriptions, basing them purely on the value-producing work that's left over.
You might be wondering, where exactly is all this compensating labor hiding? Usually it's in three main spots. First, redundant approvals.
These exist simply to compensate for totally undocumented decision rules. Second, handoff protocol documentation. When there's ambiguity between departments, it demands constant human intervention to sort it out. And third, meeting architecture revision. Those endless recurring coordination meetings. They usually only exist because asynchronous status systems haven't been built yet. When you systematize these three areas, you completely eliminate the need for that compensating labor and recapture a massive amount of organizational capacity.
Section 4, defining structural interventions, where we look at matching external help to your structural gaps.
Once you've diagnosed those structural gaps, buying the wrong kind of external help is just a massive waste of capital. You really face a fundamental binary choice here. You're either buying a deliverable or you are buying capacity. Buying a deliverable looks like business consulting, solving discrete, bounded problems that actually have a strict end date, like market analysis. Buying capacity, on the other hand, is like hiring a fractional executive, say a fractional COO. They embed directly into your operations, they lead teams, and they build ongoing execution infrastructure. They're not just handing you a slide deck, they're actually building the machine. We also have to draw a really sharp line between system building and behavior modification. Consulting and fractional roles, those are squarely focused on system building, designing workflows, SOPs, and operating cadences. But executive coaching is strictly about behavior modification. A coach is absolutely not going to write your operational playbook. They're there to challenge your leadership patterns and surface your blind spots. If you hire a coach when what you actually need is a system, or a consultant when you really need leadership development, you are guaranteeing mismatched expectations.
And finally, Section 5, conditional rules for action. Let's look at the decision matrix for capital allocation. Let's leave you with some concrete, actionable heuristics. If a specific observable condition holds true, you take this specific action. Rule 1, if you know exactly what must be built but you lack the technical expertise to actually build it, hire a consultant. Rule 2, if you know what to do but you lack the sustained execution capacity to get it implemented, hire a fractional COO. Rule 3, if you're entirely unclear on your strategic decisions or you're struggling with personal leadership patterns, hire an executive coach. You absolutely have to follow these rules to match the intervention to your exact constraint.
Now, before you pull the trigger on any of these, watch out for the structural warning signs of buying the wrong engagement model. First, deliverable-free retainers with a vague scope. That means you're buying access, not actual results. Second, the absence of an ROI measurement framework. If that's missing, the engagement is basically designed to bill indefinitely without ever proving its value. And third, scope creep without formal renegotiation. This means the initial problem architecture was entirely misdiagnosed from day one. If you see these red flags, the structure is wrong.
So this brings us to the crucial final question. Are you going to continue subsidizing compensating labor, just throwing raw talent and bloated payrolls at missing systems? Or are you going to finally build the process architecture required to actually scale? Remember, operational drag is not a sign that your team isn't working hard enough. It is a diagnostic signal that your systems have failed. Take these frameworks, apply those conditional rules, and start architecting for execution.